Hi, I'm Sheila Karuna. Welcome back to A Soul's Journey by Peter Richelieu. For those of you that are following along with me in one of the very many different versions, we are now on chapter 3. And in this particular book, if you have this one, it's page 26. So if you are finding this for the first time, all of the chapters have been recorded and they are in a playlist on the channel. I highly recommend that you begin with the preface and prologue. Yesterday, I began to give you a brief outline of conditions as they exist on the astral plane, and I shall continue with this today. The theory of the great Church of Rome, stated very roughly and briefly, is that after death, the hopelessly wicked drop into an eternal hell immediately, whilst the very great saints go at once to heaven. The ordinary man, neither very good nor very bad, needs a long or short stay in an intermediate condition called purgatory, in which his faults are eliminated. As I've told you, there is no such thing as an eternal hell. There could not be, if for no other reason than that a finite cause can never produce an infinite result. And those who pass to the astral plane with the fear of this in their minds go through a difficult beginning stage. There is little more foundation for the statement about the very great saints, for there is a condition called the heaven world, and it is quite possible that a very few great saints glide rapidly through the intermediate world, the astral, and pass directly to the mental world, there to continue their evolution. For the very large majority of people, the question of going to either heaven or hell does not arise. Their mode of progress is by passing through two conditions, the lower of which is known as purgatory. And it is with purgatory that I wish to begin today. The Roman Catholic doctrine of purgatory as an intermediate condition in which faults are eliminated by a rather painful process, symbolized by burning in fire, has a great deal of truth in it, but it is entirely deprived of its dignity by the ridiculous theory of indulgences. The suggestion that man can buy himself out of this inconvenient stage without learning the lessons for which that stage exists. There is, of course, no possibility of such a thing. No number of thousands of pounds could make the slightest difference to what happens to a man after death. I'd like to pause here and say, I don't know if the Roman Catholic Church or the Catholic Church, or I don't know if they still do that, but I am aware that there was a time on the planet where uh, one could approach the clergy and purchase indulgences that would allow them to escape purgatory, which, just, I'm sorry, but the absurdity of that, like, why would God want you to spend money? I don't know. It's just very interesting to me how I guess there must have been a time on Earth where we just flat believed everything that came. And, there are some of us that still do. So, money may help him to circumvent the laws of the physical plane during his lifetime, but after he has left this world, money has lost its value, and such expenditure by friends and relations remaining in the world, so far as he is personally concerned, is wasted. It has always seemed to me a ridiculous thing to suggest that money can divert a law of nature. No, that's true. Me too. Uh, hence my laughter about it. You cannot divert the law of gravity by offering it money, nor can you turn aside the law of divine justice by bribing it with candles, prayers, and offerings. This purgatory, as it is called, not at all inaptly, because it is a state of consciousness where a great deal of refinement and improvement takes place, is in the lower planes of the astral world. That part into which man passes almost immediately after death. It is the region where a man is purged of the blinding lower desires, which would keep him indefinitely bound to his desire body. Evolution requires that he move on to higher regions. In order that he may do this, he passes through spheres where he is made to suffer in the same way that he has made other people suffer in his physical life through dishonesty, cruelty, and so on. Through time and suffering, he learns the importance of honesty, justice, tolerance, etc., and having accomplished this, moves on. In his next incarnation, he will be born free from sin. Although the tendency to succumb to the same desires is still there, and every evil act he commits in that life will be one of free will. A man will continue in this way until he has learned by bitter, purgative experiences that he must practice tolerance and do good to others regardless of how he is treated in return. Certain eternal laws have been established, and we must try to understand them as such. If there were no laws of nature, we should soon be in a chaotic condition with nothing on which we could depend. But there are laws of nature, and these laws are the expression of the divine will. I shall try to explain what happens in purgatory by giving you some examples. The example which is always given first, because it is the most easy to comprehend, is the case of the man who has yielded in excess to the curse of drink, the drunkard. We all of us know what this drink curse can be. We know of so many cases where a man has wrecked his life, starved his wife and children, and even committed crimes innumerable, simply and solely to gratify his craving for the sensation that drink produces. If a man drank only to quench his thirst, then he would have no desire for drink after death. For thirst, like hunger, is unknown in the astral world. But the origin of the desire is not thirst. It is the craving for a certain pleasurable sensation. After death, the same craving which drove him in his lifetime to such terrible lengths will be stronger than ever. But now that he has lost his physical body, there will be no possibility of satisfying it. Desire does not belong to the physical body only, or even principally. It belongs to and is one of the functions of the desire vehicle. The other names of the astral plane are the desire plane and the emotional plane. And in this plane, desires and emotions are undiluted. The full force of a desire now tears at a man, who in his physical body has only felt about 100th part of the strength of real desire. Wow, that's a really interesting concept to consider, isn't it? No one can deny that this is suffering, but also no one can say that the man is being punished. All that has happened is that the law of cause and effect has come into operation, and he is now reaping as he sowed. He is now feeling the result of his actions during his lifetime, but he is not being punished. He has set up in himself a desire, and so he suffers. The time during which the suffering lasts may well seem to him an eternity, though in reality it may only be a few days, a few weeks, or a few months. To a certain very limited extent, he can gratify his desire in imagination. He can make thought forms of drink and imagine he is drinking. He can even imagine the taste of the liquid, but he cannot produce the result, the sensation for which he drank during his lifetime. The nearest that he can get to this sensation is to go to places where people are drinking and suck up, as it were, the fumes of the alcohol, which gives him a very limited amount of satisfaction. He does not get much, but it is something, and the best that he can get now that his physical body is no more. So here we have the case of a man who did he relate to his experiences, would certainly say that he was thrown into hell indeed. Not eternal, of course, but quite long enough and sufficiently painful while it lasted to make him think of that period as an eternity. The trouble is that no one can really help such a man. That is to say, in the sense of preventing this experience from happening. The only thing that can be done is to explain carefully to him what is happening and the reason for it, and tell him that the only way out is to get rid of the desire. For until it has worked itself out or been got rid of, the suffering must continue. Sooner or later, he realizes this, and so that stage of his purgatory ends. Next, take the case of a miser who hoards his gold on earth and secretes it so that he alone knows where it may be found. Think of the pleasure he derived whilst living from visiting the venue of his hoard and gathering up the gold pieces or notes, letting them slip from his fingers one by one to fall again on the heap which he has made. I'm flashed Scrooge McDuck here, you know. That whole scene of him swimming in his gold that was in his vault came to mind. Picture his crying out in his joy, all mine, mine, all mine, and no one shall touch it but me. Then think what such a man's feelings would be when he saw from the astral level the hoard discovered and probably spent recklessly by those who were fortunate enough to find it. He could do nothing, although doubtless he did hang around the hiding place for a considerable time after death. He may have tried to influence the searchers to go elsewhere. No doubt he did all in his power to put them off the scent, but he would know no method of communicating with them except when they were asleep and temporarily at his level. In most cases, they would remember nothing of such conversations and so be uninfluenced by his efforts. Once again, no one is punishing that man. Nevertheless, he is suffering from the uncontrolled emotions of covetousness and greed. He must get away from purely physical things if he is to find happiness. Another very common case is that of the extremely jealous man who thinks he is in love with someone, whilst in reality, all he wants is to possess that individual, body and soul, for his own personal gratification. Surely a man who really loved would be thankful to see the object of his love receive admiration and attention from others. But the jealous man is not. Having been jealous during his lifetime, he remains jealous after death, torturing himself indefinitely and uselessly by constantly watching the approaches of others to the object of his supposed love, hating those other people and trying in every way to influence them, but finding his efforts useless. No one is punishing such people for being jealous. They are simply reaping the results of their own foolishness through the uncontrollable operation of the law of karma, or the law of cause and effect. The only way that anyone can help them is by the intellectual method of giving them advice, trying to show them how foolishly they are acting, and by explaining to them that all that is required for them to obtain peace is that they should eliminate the selfishness from their love and should realize that no one can own another ego, body, and soul, however much he may wish to do so. One other example, and then I'm finished with purgatory. A businessman once ruined one of his competitors, and when criticized by some of his friends, said that harsh treatment was good in business, that he had learned the hard way, and that the lesson would not be wasted on his competitor in the long run. Sure enough, after some years had elapsed, the broken man did rise again. In fact, he became a much more successful man than the one who had ruined him in his early life. The ruthless man often quoted this as proof of how right he had been, that ruthless treatment of a competitor was in reality a blessing in disguise. He thought no more about the incident during his lifetime. How different it all appeared when the whole story was shown to him in what is called purgatory. There he saw the little man after he was ruined, return to his home where he told his wife and of his misfortune. It was also shown how this man's son, who was starting his career at the university, had to give up that career and take the first job offered to him, that of a humble clerk. The father started again, and as I have said, in due time became a rich man, but that was too late to help the son. What of him? He was bitter at the trick fate had played on him, so instead of settling down in his new sphere of activity and making the best of it, he became mixed up with bad companions, tried to make money quickly by dishonest means, and finally landed in prison, which broke his mother's heart and caused her death. The whole story, now seen in its full perspective, is a major tragedy, and you can easily imagine the suffering of that ruthless businessman when he realized that the result of his greed, so thoughtless at the time, caused not only the temporary ruin of a young man's career, On the other side, wait a minute, of a small competitor, that's right, sorry, not cause not only the temporary ruin of a small competitor, but also the death of one woman and the ruin of a young man's career. On the other side, we see the full and complete results of all our actions. And I want to I'm just flash something, and actually when one asks to be shown things, I'm seeing I'm seeing the results of a lot of my actions now while I'm still here, so that I can learn from those prior, so that I can make amends to those whom I may have even inadvertently wronged, at least seeking them out and having a conversation in regards to that wrong, if you will. And it looks different for each, but um, I felt to share that because of the way it came in. So I'm going to say that again. On the other side, we see the full and complete results of all our actions. Few of us do not suffer in the seeing and register a vow that in future lives we shall act differently. The change in outlook towards such things is what purgatory is meant to produce. And once our outlook is changed, our experiences in purgatory are at an end. By learning these lessons thoroughly, we can ensure that after future lives, our passing through the lower part of the astral world will be little delayed by experiences similar to those I have related. We have to learn a lesson once only, and if our characters change thereby, we avoid much trouble and temporary misery in the future. Just as the astral experiences of the average man and the man below average standard are in accordance with the types of lives they have lived on earth, so those of the intellectual man, the man above the average, are also in accordance with his mode of living. Such men pass more quickly through the lower to the higher levels of the astral world, where they are not only able to continue any experimental work in which they were interested, but can gather students with similar tastes around them. Such gatherings are to be seen frequently: the scientist with his group of students, the mathematician with his smaller group. Both find the astral world a much more suitable plane in which to work than the physical world, for four-dimensional space can now be studied with opportunities of experimenting. The artist has his group of pupils trying to imitate his skill, as also does the musician, and now the latter is happy indeed, for he has the opportunity of listening not only to the world's music, but to the music of nature, from that of the sea and the wind to the music of the spheres. For there is a music of the spheres. There is an ordered song as the planets move through their mighty curves in space. I'm going to pause this here because there has actually been recordings of that song now. And again, this experience in the 40s, none of that had already been done. So I find that quite interesting myself. There is music and color connected with all the vast cosmic world, but as yet we understand the glory of the cosmic life as little as the crawling ant understands our life with its many activities. A musician may meet the great angels of music, for there are angels who live for music, who express themselves in and by music, to whom music is what speech is to us. You will hear more about their activities later. For the spiritually minded man, the man who has meditated deeply on higher things, there waits an infinity of bliss. During his lifetime, he's had to rely on faith and his own reasoning powers. Now he can prove the truth of many of the theories which he has studied in the world, and one can but faintly imagine the joy and peace that this knowledge will bring to such a man. He has been struggling in darkness, and now, to a certain extent, he has found the light. The philanthropist who during his lifetime has had one thought, one object in view, the helping of his fellow man, has perhaps the greatest opportunity of all, for now he is free to devote the whole of his time to helping and comforting those who require his services. If he takes up the special work of helping those who have just passed over, he will find work for every minute of his astral life. During wartime, the need for this work is great, for the ignorant are many and the helpers are few. Much good karma is then earned by those who have fitted themselves for such work and who seize this golden opportunity. Therefore, I say to you, seek knowledge, not that you may help yourself alone, but that by this knowledge you may be able to assist your brother in distress. Also, that you may take your share in this great scheme of evolution and be what every thinking man should be, a guide and helper to the ignorant. Today brings me to one of the most pleasant parts of my description of the astral world, for I must now talk about children. And after all, do not children really make a world? It is only necessary to spend Christmas with a family that is without children to realize what a difference their happy voices and romping games make to this greatest of all festivals. Nothing seems the same. The house appears to be dead, and the world empty of true happiness. Children's laughter is the most wonderful thing in the world, the one thing most missed by those who have worshipped at its shrine in the past, when they find that the time is gone by and that the revelers of the nursery have been submerged into the huge cauldron of adult humanity. It is as if children are the only really natural beings in the human world, the only people who understand enjoyment. The explanation of this lies in the fact that having so recently returned to earth, they are as yet so near to the truly glorious life of the heaven world that they still retain some touch with life at its highest, life that is one with the nature kingdom, the land of fairies, the land of beauties untold and undreamed of by the material beings we all seem to become when we grow up and are tarred with the brush of convention and, quote, respectability. A condition analogous to this is to be seen in the animal kingdom. Even lion cubs are delightful as babies. When they are born, they have no fear, for they have just come from the astral world where fear does not exist for them. After some months or even a year or so, their instinct, which is part of the group soul to which they belong, filters through. Then fear and antagonism for the human race comes into force, and no longer can they be considered as safe pets. It is usually considered that nothing is quite so sad as for a child to be cut off at any stage of its career, but especially at the time when it is emerging from babyhood into what is described as the interesting stage, quote, at about 3 years old. The period when a child ceases to be a child is not determined by age. Some lose their childish ways as soon. I feel like this is describing what I've referred to as the God frequency in children. And and actually for me, it does differ per each individual child, but I have seen children that still carry that God frequency with them past the age of 7. Not many, but there are. And the ones that feel like that most specifically to me are mostly the ones who have like some form of autism. I don't know why that is, and it's not I could prove it. It's a feeling that I have. Okay, so the period when a child ceases to be a child is not determined by age. Some lose their childish ways as soon as they enter school. Others remain children until well into their teens. The death of a child must always seem unnecessary to those who have not grasped at least the elementary theory of evolution, for it is very natural that they should wonder why parents have to suffer in this way and what the use is of a life which ends so soon after it has begun. Students of evolution, however, realize that a child is an individual who has descended to this physical plane to obtain experience, to work out its destiny. If it dies young, it gains little experience, and it will not take long to assimilate this after leaving the physical world. Thus, it is more likely that the child who has died young will be back sooner to live another life. It does not follow that it would lose anything or suffer in any way from this early death. If the average person would only take the little trouble necessary to gain this knowledge, how much happier the world would be. When a baby is about to pass to the next world, the ceremony of baptism should always be performed. This rite makes the child a member of a holy brotherhood, surrounds it with a certain definite protection, and starts it along a certain line of vibrations and influences which prevent harm from coming near it. I don't know why, but this part of the book it seems to stand out as an experiential filter, perhaps. I don't know. When children reach the astral world, they have a wonderfully happy life because of the absence of restrictions. They never lack attention, for there are always numbers of mothers that have passed over who are willing and eager to care for a child that has died when a baby. They have the same maternal feelings when living at the astral level as they had when living in the physical world. Poverty, lack of food, suffering from cold, such things have no place in the thoughts of the astral mother. Sleep is no longer a necessity, so there is plenty of time to give any child she adopts. Plenty of time to give to any child she adopts. Apart from the pleasure of seeing that it is cared for and amused, she can commence the child's education, introducing it to the beauties of this world in their many forms. Such teaching may leave its mark on the child, and may cause it to turn to the artistic side of life in its next incarnation, as well as foster mothers who are always available. There is a vast army of astral helpers also ready to pilot a newcomer through the early stages of his new life. Like the adult, the child is unchanged by passing to this new world. There are always many who are only too anxious to help him at his games, and there are also the nature spirits who play a great part in children's games on the astral plane. Think of the imaginative child surrounding himself still in imagination with the wonders of the kingdoms described in his fairy books. In this astral world, the child will not have to rely on make believe. Once a thing is imagined, it is there, plain for him to see. For the matter of the astral world is molded by thought, and just as long as the child imagines a thing, so will the thing be there. Instead of sitting in an old wash tub with a pair of walking sticks for oars, the child who wants to row on the river has only to think of the river, only to imagine the boat and the oars, and they are there for his use. The child who loves to imitate the heroes of fiction has only to think strongly of himself as the hero, and he immediately becomes his idea of what that character should be. The plastic astral body is molded into that very shape, and so, for the time being, the child absolutely becomes what he is trying to imagine. He becomes Hermes with the winged shoes, or Jason in charge of the Argo, or Robin Hood, the hero of Sherwood Forest. Whatever he thinks of, he becomes, and when he gets tired of that impersonation, he has only to think of someone else, and the plastic astral body obeys his commands. It is a wonderful education for a child, this living amongst the characters of his imagination, since he learns much by this method that would be impossible under physical plane conditions. We all know the child who is continually asking questions. How often have we found ourselves up against a stumbling block because it is impossible to give an answer that may be understood by the listener who has only a child's undeveloped brain and elementary intellect? Sometimes we even go so far as to scold the child and to try to discourage him from questioning. We do not want to hinder his progress. We just feel that now and again our answers are so inadequate that it would be better for the question to remain unanswered rather than to give a wrong impression. When the astral plane conditions can be made use of, all that is changed. He can be shown the answer to his question by making an image to float before his eyes. A living model, for it is living so long as our thoughts are concentrated upon it, is a great improvement on the worldly discourse. It may be asked, quote, do the children not miss their fathers and mothers, friends and playmates? End quote. No, they do not. And for this reason, everyone, when asleep, spends these hours in the same world as the child who is dead. The fathers and mothers who mourn because they think they have lost a child find that the same child is visible to them again the moment they sleep and are out of their physical bodies. They are able to talk to the child and he to them, to play with him, to continue his education, and so on. They are able practically to carry on from where they left off on earth. But the pity of it is that these self-same parents remember nothing about this when they wake up in the morning. The child after death is invisible to the average parent, to all who have not developed clairvoyance, whereas the parents are never invisible to the child. He can always see them, the astral counterparts of their physical bodies. And often, when parents are mourning over the death of a child, the one who is dead is standing by their side, trying in every way possible to communicate with them. To the child, the parents seem to be very dull and stupid at times, for the child cannot realize that although he can see them, they cannot see him. An oft repeated question is, do children grow when they are living in the astral world? This question is always difficult to answer because if the child is asked, it usually answers, yes, I have grown quite a lot. As I've told you, the astral body does not grow after death. For though the child develops mentally and learns more, the body actually remains as it was when the child died. Growth is only necessary at the physical level. After a person is born, the body grows gradually until it attains full stature, unless the subject dies when the physical growth then unless the subject dies when physical growth automatically ceases. As there is now no physical body to which the astral body need adapt itself, it too ceases to grow. When the child says it has grown, it means the child, quote, thinks it has grown. The plastic astral body immediately responds to that thought and for a time is bigger. But as soon as the thought is dropped, the body returns to its actual or usual size. There is nothing mysterious about this. It is only the working of the laws of nature, and higher matter responds to those laws as well as the lower variety. I once saw a most interesting example of how this works for different people, in a case where a man and his wife died together in a motor accident. 10 years previous to that date, they had lost a young daughter aged 5. The man, who had studied occultism, expected to see his daughter looking just the same as when he was alive, so greeted her by picking her up in his arms in the same way as he used to when he came home from his office. The wife, however, not having studied these matters in any way, naturally added up the years that had passed since the child died and expected to see a girl of 15 years of age waiting to greet her on the other side. She was not disappointed. She saw the tall girl with the attractive face and eyes that she had so often imagined her daughter would grow into, and exclaimed as she greeted her, "Haven't you grown? Why, you're nearly a woman now." The husband, knowing something of the peculiarities of the astral plastic matter, was not at all surprised and did not spoil her pleasure by explaining to his wife that what she was really seeing was a thought form made by herself within which was housed the ego of their daughter, whom they had not seen except during sleep for the past 10 years. This example shows that although it is a fact that people do not grow in size on the astral plane, yet to those who cannot subscribe to this fact or find it difficult to understand, their illusions prove quite satisfactory and no one is harmed by them. And I want to pause that here because I'm just being shown specifically that this is what I mean when I say that my consciousness only reveals to me what I'm ready for. And this seems to be echoing that same point. Before finishing my remarks on the life of children at the astral level, let me give you one example to show how the early death of a child can and actually does benefit that child considerably. Two people who were married but in poor circumstances longed for a child. In due time, a son was born to them who lived for just 2 years. The parents were frantic with grief at his loss, and nothing and no one seemed to be able to console them. Life, which before had seemed to be nearly perfect, was now empty and desolate, and the atmosphere of their home was depressing in the extreme. In time, they felt the loss less keenly, but the wound was still there, and each made it worse for the other by treating the subject as a closed one, never to be mentioned, which only meant that they both brooded all the more in their hurt. I'm sorry, I added the word hurt for some reason, in their inner hearts. The one thing they had both loved, the child, whose future they had planned, had been taken from them, and great was their grief, great their feeling of frustration that they should be treated thus by a Creator who was said to be beneficent. This sorrow acted in different ways on the two people. Whilst the woman carried on her household duties and prayed that one day she might conceive another child, the man threw himself wholeheartedly into his business, feeling quite rightly that hard work would take his mind off his great sorrow. 5 years after the death of the first child, the woman produced another son, and their joy was complete. As it happened, the new son was the same ego who had been taken from them 5 years ago, though the hard work which the sorrowing father had put into his business, through the hard work which the sorrowing father had put into his business, the material resources of the family were now flourishing. So when the time came for the second child to be educated, the man was in a position to give him a first-class education. 5 years earlier, the money would not have been available for this. The net result of this seemingly useless death was that firstly, the husband and wife paid off quite a number of units of karma through their suffering, and secondly, the child who had earned the right to be given a good education by actions in his previous life had to be withdrawn from the first body, kept waiting 5 years for the second body, and then reborn to the same family. The child ego did not suffer at all by these occurrences. He gained much by the opportunities available to him in his second body. Being born a few years later is nothing in the scheme of evolution, but often a few years make all the difference to the conditions ruling in a particular family on the physical plane, which can have far-reaching effects on egos born into such an environment. To sum up, generally, it is necessary for a man to return to the home of the ego, which is at the higher mental level, only if he has lived a life in the physical world for an average length of time. To get there, he must pass through the astral world, live his life there, then drop his astral body, and in his mental body consolidate at the mental level all the mental experiences and intellectual efforts that took place in his last life. This being done, his mental body is also dropped, and he does not get new. Wait a minute. This being done, His mental body is also dropped, and he does not get new mental and astral vehicles until the time comes for him to incarnate again. I mention this now so that you may realize that a short life on the physical plane often means that the child, having little or no experience to consolidate after such a short physical existence, returns to the astral plane only for a few years and is then given a new physical body retaining the same astral and mental bodies which it had drawn round itself prior to the recent short life on the physical plane. As you are beginning to appreciate, evolution is a slow process. We would understand it more easily if we could see the scheme as a whole instead of the small part most of us get a glimpse of whilst living at the physical level. There is much that I shall have to teach you about life at the astral level, and I shall give you an opportunity of asking many questions as you like concerning the points on which you are not quite clear. Before I go on, however, I propose to try out an experiment with which I think you will be only too anxious to cooperate. Last night I received permission from my master, who is one of the great adepts or perfected men who help to govern this planet, to give you the opportunity of seeing for yourself some of the conditions about which I've been talking the last few days. It was my master who sent me to you in the first place. What I propose is that you shall yourself go on an astral journey. And if you will do exactly what I tell you, I think I can help you to remember much of that which you see and do during the time you are out of your body. Tomorrow morning, therefore, I shall not visit you as I usually do. You can spend the morning reading all the notes you made of my talks during the past 6 days. Refresh your memory on every detail possible, for you will need to remember a great deal of what I have told you if you are to benefit from the opportunity I propose to give you, in the hope that it will make many things which are now not clear easier for you to understand. You must eat no meat today or tomorrow, nor touch alcohol. I know you usually eat very little meat and seldom drink very much, but even a little alcohol will add to my difficulties, for it will be my job to impress on your brain cells on your return to your physical body the necessity for you to remember what you have been doing out of your body. It may not necessarily be completely successful, but we shall try. And since my master has agreed to the scheme, I have no doubt that he will help me to carry it out. Tomorrow evening, you must have your last meal at 7 o'clock. Go to your room after dinner and be ready for bed at 9:45 p.m. I have here a tablet which you must take when you go to bed, as it will ensure that you are asleep by 10 o'clock, at which time I shall arrive. Before setting yourself for sleep, try to imagine what you look like lying on your bed. The simplest method of doing this is for you to imagine that immediately above your bed, where the ceiling is, there is a huge mirror. Where this is so, were this so, uh, what you would see in that mirror, what would you see in that mirror after you got to bed? That is the picture I wish you to have in mind as you fall asleep, for that is what you will see immediately after you disconnect yourself from your physical body. At first, you may be so surprised at seeing what appears to be you lying on the bed, whereas the real you is looking at that physical body, that instinctively you become somewhat frightened, and the result of that fear would be a hurried return to the body on the bed, and you would wake up again. I am warning you beforehand what to expect, as I wish to avoid this. Although you get out of your body every night, you do not remember anything about this because you are not conscious of getting out. Now I am trying to arrange that there will be no break of consciousness at all between your falling asleep and realizing your detachment from your physical body. I shall try to help you to retain that continuity of consciousness right from the moment of your falling asleep to the moment of your return to your body in the morning. Then you will have no difficulty in remembering and being able to describe in detail all that you have done in your astral body during the hours when your physical body remained lying on the bed. Without this continuity of consciousness, you would remember little or nothing of such doings, only bringing back a fragment of one or more happenings, which you would probably describe as a dream. Most people's dreams are fragments of what they have been doing during their sleep, which the brain cells often distort. It is never easy to remember every detail correctly, and it takes years of study, concentration, and practice to achieve anything like perfect results. And that is why I cannot guarantee that you will remember everything, even when helped by my master. If perchance you are entirely successful, you must not be disappointed if you find, as undoubtedly you will, that on future occasions when you wake up, you are unable to bring through anything at all. Now, I will leave you until we meet tomorrow night. The day after tomorrow, I shall not see you either because I wish you to write down all you can remember of your astral experiences. We shall discuss these when I see you again in the flesh in 3 days' time at the usual hour. Have faith in yourself, and all will be well. Wow. Okay, so that was chapter 3. And next up, chapter 4. I hope that you've enjoyed this and are enjoying A Soul's Journey by Peter Richelieu. If you're new here, please subscribe, like, and share this video. Well, share the whole playlist, actually. That way, folks can have the whole playlist. Till we meet again, be well, my friends.